My name is Mary Marshall, and I'm the former Solar Forward Program Manager. And we have here virtually live with us today Ellen Ross, who is the current Solar Forward Program Manager. So to start things off, I would like to introduce this program to you. Solar Forward is a program that is by Solar Energy International. We are an international nonprofit training facility to train folks to get into the solar industry and in the solar industry on the design and installation of solar systems, everything from grid tied to battery based to operations and maintenance. We're located in Paonia in Western Colorado. To learn more about Solar Energy International, you can find us at solarenergy.org. And to learn more specifically about the Solar Forward program, you can see our link down here on the screen underneath our contact information. Solar Forward is SEI's technical consulting program that helps kickstart solar markets in rural communities. In this presentation today, we will cover why solar in rural communities, what is a Solar Forward program, what tools does this program have to offer communities, and finally, what are some of the unique challenges in rural communities that this program seeks to address, and what are some of the challenges that as an industry we should come together to think about and to address as well. So we're going to cover briefly just the energy transition in the US. It has been pretty drastic over the past 5 years, and unfortunately, a lot of this impact has been felt in rural communities where their local economies are really based around fossil fuel production. So in 2020, 20% of the power generated in the US came from coal, which was down from 31% in 2017. US coal production dropped 34% since 2017, which was the largest decline since 1932. Unfortunately, nearly 10% of coal jobs have been lost during this time, and a lot of those losses have been felt in rural communities. Another stat, just to highlight the volatility of depending on some of these fossil fuel contributors in the economy, are that fracking in major oil basins fell by 2/3 in Q2 of 2020. So especially in the US West, which is a lot of the regions that we're working in through this program, a lot of local economies have been built around coal mining. And as these industries shrink, it's really important to create some economic resiliency through bolstering other market contributors in those communities. So we all here are familiar with the benefits of a solar market. So I'll just go through this quickly. It addresses energy burdens, and in low-income households, the portion of, or in low-income households, you're paying such a bigger percentage of your household income toward your utility bill. But solar seeks to address that. Solar in a community creates employment opportunities, reduces exposure to pollution, and increases resilience. But it also has even more benefits spanning beyond that. For example, nonprofits that adopt renewable energy systems can then use additional capacity and additional capital that's not going to their electricity bill to have more programs that serve their local community. Same with local businesses, without paying that big utility bill cost. That's capital that can go toward increasing their own capacity and hiring on more employees. Of course, energy democracy, taking the power of your energy generation into the deciding hands of your community members. But let's talk more about the sort of disproportionate adoption of renewable energy across the country. So I have here the Sierra Club's 100% renewable energy map. And as you can see, most, but not all, of the 100% renewable energy goals tend to trend toward more urban areas, coastal states, and liberal states. So if you take a rural state like Illinois that happens to have a big city in the upper corner, bordering Michigan, Chicago, you can see that that state is mostly gray with some yellow highlighted areas. And an issue that we are seeing is that so many bigger cities have aggressive renewable energy goals, which is great. But as we just covered, rural communities can really benefit so much from solar energy and the amazing economic impacts that it can bring. And unfortunately, these communities don't have the same resources to achieve these goals, whether it's community education, whether it's existing capital resources, or existing solar companies or existing nonprofits that can help people achieve these goals. So the Solar Forward program was created to address some of those obstacles in rural communities. Solar Forward envisions a world where barriers to clean energy adoption are addressed by local grassroots economic and policy solutions. While each community solutions are unique, together they are a collective force in addressing the climate crisis. This program works by SEI partnering with a local group, a nonprofit, a group of community volunteers, or a government on the ground to help them achieve renewable energy sustainability goals. This program started in our rural county that we're based in, Delta County, and it was born out of a prevalent problem that we addressed at the beginning of this presentation. In Delta County, 2 of 3 coal mines closed down in 2015, and SEI sought out a way to help economic development in the local community through solar. And that approach was holistic in terms of we started training community members and working with community members to do a bulk purchase solar adoption campaign called Solarize. We worked with local high schoolers to do a trade training program to train folks to install solar. And then we worked with regional stakeholders to support means of financing for people to go solar, like, for example, the CPACE program. And then we ultimately systemized and scaled that program out to help other communities. So the Solar Forward program provides free technical consulting to existing on-the-ground groups to help run these initiatives in their communities. We provide an existing toolkit of resources to help them implement some of these campaigns. And we also provide workforce development training and support from our for-profit spin-off, SEI Professional Services, which is an engineering consulting company. To date, this program has seen over 2.2 megawatts of installed solar across Colorado, 330 total PV systems. It's reached 10 counties. It's had nearly 36 new jobs, and of course, hundreds educated on the benefits of solar energy and energy efficiency. But I'm here today and aligned with the purpose of this breakout session to talk to you about some of the unique challenges faced by rural communities. So I have one of our previous partners, Hunter, here to give you his perspective on some of the challenges that he faced implementing this program.
I would say, as far as like pushback on renewables, we received relatively little in Gunnison, but I still feel like in general there's still a fair amount of confusion around renewables, and I don't think that's a Gunnison specific thing. I think that's across the country and probably across the world in a lot of places. That they associate it with more expensive electricity, which, you know, maybe 10 years ago that was the case, but prices have come down so far now that it's competitive with even natural gas. And so I think there's just a lot of, I don't want to say ignorance, because that's not the right word, but just people who didn't know the benefits, who weren't sure that it could work for them, who weren't sure that it could work for the county. And I think, you know, in a lot of, especially coal and oil regions, you know, there is a a local love for that because it's provided them with economic capital for a long time. And when you come along, they were going to get rid of that and replace it with something new. If that's all you say, then yeah, there's going to be a lot of pushback. And so I really think in a lot of these places, especially in the West, like especially our neighbors to the north in Wyoming, as that transitions out of coal, there's going to be a lot of resources and a lot of help needed there to make that transition.
So, as Hunter was saying, one of the big challenges that there is to address in rural communities, especially transitioning coal mining communities, is that there are misconceptions about renewables nationwide. And in a lot of these 100% renewable supporting regions, there is a lot of education available and there are a lot of resources to let the community know about the benefits of renewable energy. And, that is not something that's as prevalent in some of these rural communities. So there are also unique concerns related to geography and climate. So, for example, where Hunter lived in Gunnison County, it's a very big geographic area. Half of it is rural high desert farming. The other half is 10,000 feet elevation in the mountains. So it's hard to do a unified countywide program that has messaging that appeals to everybody in these different areas of the county. So, for example, when you're talking about high elevation solar systems, you have to address concerns like snow accumulation over the winter. You're also dealing with multiple different utilities, rural electric co-ops, and different policies across the region. So the solarized model that we use in this program is not something that we created. It's something that has been used nationwide, but we have adopted this model to meet some of the unique needs of rural communities in terms of addressing stigmas, in terms of having a program that can cover a wide geographic space, and in terms of having some specialized messaging to accommodate for different climates that could create concerns around adopting solar. So just some more challenges that I would like to address are, we talked about the solarized model being nationwide, but this is another model that excels when you're working with a population that can all go solar relatively easily, and there's a lot of interest, and it definitely grows a solar market. But when we're talking about places that have less households in a given area, and especially low income households, it makes the program less accessible. So we work to really leverage local sources of capital, whether that's local banks, local foundations, to really help make the adoption of solar more accessible in some of the communities that we're working in. But there's always so much more work to do to make the adoption of solar energy more accessible. So my question that I would pose to you all is, in terms of bulk adoption of solar, how do we encourage more accessible adoption of solar in rural communities when we're talking about places that have a much lower population density than cities? So another big obstacle in these communities is that there might not be any existing solar installation companies. And it is so important to keep this economic development local and to have a local workforce and create local jobs, because, there's a lot of pressure sometimes in programs to see a lot of solar installations, but what's more important is knowing that the solar market is growing in a locally beneficial and sustainable way. So one of the ways that we address the lack of trained local workforce is by providing SEI training in these communities, but there's still so much more to be done. There is a lot of emphasis now on national funding, federal funding related to, more trade-focused jobs, more solar-focused jobs. So I would encourage folks to really advocate when we're talking about local solar development to also make sure that that funding is going toward local workforce development. So you have the existing market infrastructure to support this growth. Finally, some other challenges are scaling up safely. And, once we are starting these solar businesses and we have a demand for solar, is that demand going to be so great that it will affect the quality of the installs? One of the ways that we address that with SEI is by bringing in our for-profit engineering consulting company to do free spot checks and consulting for local installation companies on the ground. That way we can make sure that all the installations happening through this program are safe and of high quality. But that's something that we can also think about. How are we going to scale out that effort through rural communities nationwide? And then finally, there are so many challenges to starting a small business as it is, but we're talking about the challenges of both starting a solar installation company, being in rural America in this sort of volatile market. There are a lot of challenges that exist in the framework of a solar market before we can see more solar installations. And that's definitely a big piece of the puzzle that we have to look at as an industry. So this is just a little promotion. We have a new partnership with the Colorado Energy Office. We'll be collaborating on a lot of programs, bringing resources to rural communities. Finally, this is our contact information.